I just want to take a couple minutes today and tell you a little bit about what's going on at NAIS and some of the work that certainly that I'm involved in and that the rest of the association is involved in. And it begins with this concept that I call the innovation imperative, this idea about where we are in schools. And I use this concept that I've come to call the three-bucket theory. It began with an article that John Gula wrote several years ago. John Gula is the executive director of the E.E. Ford Foundation. And in the article, John talked about three different kinds of schools. There's the bucket one schools, I like to call them. And bucket one schools have 20 years of runway. They have strong brands, strong enrollment, strong endowment. They're in a very strong market. They don't have anything to worry about. And what I always say is if you're wondering whether you're a bucket one school or not, you're not. Because the bucket one schools know exactly who they are, right? And so then you're either in bucket two or bucket three. Bucket two schools get it. They understand that this is an incredible time of opportunity for our schools, and they are ready and willing and working every day to move forward to create the best possible schools they can and to live into the challenges that we face. Bucket three schools have yet to realize that imperative. And so the question really becomes, which are we? And what's amazing to me in my time in the last 3 years that I've been at NAIS since I left the school is that I see bucket two schools every day. And when I'm talking, even in the time of being here today talking with schools, I'm excited about the opportunity that exists for our schools. There are, though, some challenges that are real that we're facing. You know, there's all kinds of churn in the national educational landscape. You know, we're seeing growth in some kinds of schools, and we're seeing a real decrease in other kinds of schools. You know, we're seeing, when we look at just charter schools, we're seeing a 75% increase. 7,000 charter schools serving 3.2 million students. Just to put that in contrast, if we were to add up all the students in all 1,800 NAIS member schools, there would be about 1 million students. So that's an incredible number. We're also seeing in homeschools increase. This is the number of homeschool students and the growth only going out as far as 2012. We're also seeing, one of my favorite graphs now is a look at the fertility rate in the U.S. This is one of the best graphs for me when we actually take a look at what the baby boom really looked like. In terms of, this was the number of babies born per 1,000 women. So it sort of was we can see that the number went from around about 125 to now about somewhere in the 60s. And so the number has really changed. And if we were to zoom in, particularly on the period since 2008, we would see even more of a serious decline. We're also seeing, this graph I thought was fascinating on the percent of households run by a 24 to 35-year-old, the percent of the people that were running those households that are carrying student debt. And in 1989, that was 15%, and today it's 46%, right? That's a powerful number in terms of some of the headwinds that we face. We're also, when we look at the SSS financial aid data, and we take a look at what's going on inside of who's applying for financial assistance, one of the things that this graph shows is that almost 10% of the families that are applying for financial assistance, based on last year's data, are making over $250,000. And if we look at the top, almost 22%, that's families making over $175,000. Now that's national data. That's not necessarily in your market, but it gives a feel for the change, and that's a change we've been seeing more and more. And then when we look at our DASL data and we look at lower school enrollment, one of the things we're noticing there is that lower school enrollment over the last 10 years is in decline, while upper school enrollment has been increasing. And that yields a total kind of flat enrollment picture for NAIS schools, a slight increase, but we're seeing a lot of churn, a lot of change inside of that. So for me, these are moments of opportunity. These are moments of opportunity for us to think in innovative ways. One of the things that I also think is quite interesting is the rise of the fourth industrial revolution. This has been something that Jefferson Burnett and our team does a lot of work thinking about, and this is something I've been reading a lot about and thinking about. And what is coming in the fourth industrial revolution, and is really just very much beginning now, is the rise of this sort of cyber power, that more and more things are connected all the time. I look at, for example, if any of you have been studying what's coming with 5G, right? We are going to see an incredible change in what you can do with mobile devices. There is going to be sort of a new renaissance of the number of devices that are connected, the speed of our connectivity, and the pervasiveness of that connectivity. And it's going to change. It's going to continue to change things. The other night I was watching a football game with my son, and Facebook's Oculus commercial came on. And it was blowing my mind in terms of this like dialing in with your lightsaber, putting a helmet on. And I wonder what's going to change. What's going to happen when our students are going home from schools and putting on these 3D virtual reality masks and venturing into new worlds. And with 5G, this kind of technology is going to be very powerful and very persistent. And so what is NAIS focused on? There are 4 primary priorities right now, 4 things that we're spending a lot of time thinking about. One of them is this idea of how do we reimagine schools? How do we partner deeply with our members and with schools around the country and around the world to think about what great education looks like moving forward? We're also spending a lot of time, as Deborah was talking about, Anne-Marie Balzano and our team, and many others are spending a lot of time thinking about leadership and governance, doing studies and research, figuring out what's really happening here. We're also focused deeply on student health and well-being. As Deborah so, I think, appropriately said, this is an area that we all need to be thinking quite a bit about. And lastly, we're spending a lot of our time thinking about how we can better serve members. And so this team, our team, is focused very heavily on not only trends and data and research, but also partnering closely with schools. Because in the work that I'm doing in our strategy lab, we are helping schools and thinking with schools about how we turn data research and experience, how we turn that into insight, how we turn insight into design, how we turn design into action, and how we turn action into impact. Because this is really where we're focused as we move forward, is how do we help schools and partner with schools and co-create with schools to really create the future. And so the number one most consistent thing that I'm seeing, and seeing in many, many schools within this room, is the idea of, as we're navigating this innovation journey together, how do we really build momentum within our schools? And that's the thing that I'll be speaking about later today, but it's also something that I see as the most consistent characteristic of schools that are moving forward, is that idea, that bucket 2 imperative that's creating momentum within the school communities. So I thank you very much, Deborah, for giving me the chance, and it's so exciting to be here and be part of this community. Thanks, everyone.